Hello, this is R Rats with Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between Moomaster and Fireball. This was played in round 1 of the Team 53 playoffs under 1600 section. Black's team has a 2-1 match advantage, so Black has draw odds, and let's see what happens. Okay. Looks like we're headed into King's Indian defense, and there's that bishop f4 again. We saw that in a couple of these type positions in some of the videos I've made, but Black had a c6 d5 pawn structure opposing it. Or was it White that had the c3 d4 pawn structure with the bishop? That's a good test for you. Are you watching my videos? Okay. I make so many of them, sometimes I can't remember what they're about. Okay. Here we see this thematic move that people are trying a lot, just trying to get the bishop off. And this is a long range plan. Your idea is that eventually you want to play a bishop versus knight ending and win it, like Kashdan did against Stoltz. And I've quoted that game's in my library. If you want to learn how to win with a bishop versus knight, watch my other videos and peek at that game in my library. Okay. But I'm not convinced it's always the best strategy to go for, but if you're playing for a draw, well, why not? Okay, so White drops the bishop back and Black takes it. So really, the game is still even. The fact that Black has the bishop pair is just something to be used later. So, like I say in an ending, if you want to use the middle game, you've got to open up the position. So how can Black open up this position? That's the first question we have to ask ourselves. Before we see what Black played, how are you going to do that? Well, you can make an exchange on d4, okay? That's one way to open up the position. It does a little bit, because what does it do? It puts the question to White how to recapture. If he takes with the knight, okay, now we've got this long diagonal for the bishop, and the other bishop has a nice diagonal too, okay? So that's one way to go about it. Now let's suppose White takes the other way. But before I show that, I'm not going to analyze this position out and show what all the potential moves is. What I've done is I've showed Black could activate his minor pieces by making that exchange. Now that gives White one other recapture, okay? Now, what does Black do? Okay. Well, one move Black can play right here and right now is e5. Okay. Now, White has some choices once again. What's he going to do? If White takes with the pawn, Black takes with the knight. Now, we've cleared the c8 h3 diagonal for the bishop, and everything else is looking fine. The Black Knight has some squares. It can go to b6, it can go to c5, it can go to f6. Okay, we have to be careful about we don't drop e5, but those are just squares it can go to. And then sure looks to me like the Black bishops have some diagonals here, and White's bishop is kind of limited because of this pawn on c4. So what else does White have? Well, he has d5. Well, Black still has this bishop with his nice diagonal, and can he play knight c5 right now? Maybe not. White might get b4 in, but Black can play a5 here. Okay, now what does a5 do? It anchors in control of b4 so that White's going to have trouble getting rid of that knight on c5. So let's just look at this for a moment. Let's play some fantasy moves here. How are we going to do this? Okay, now there we've kicked it. Okay, pawn takes. Now Black's got to deal with his knight, so let's just put it on a6. Now that blocks the a file. Not that White could do anything with it much. It gains a tempo on b5, or yeah, b4, and we still have this long diagonal. And we might have some tactical shots with e4 coming. We don't know. How's White going to handle this? Okay, so queen b2. But like I say, Black just goes about his business, and just take a good diagonal for the bishop. And black's got comfortable equality here. All he needs is a draw. So when you go about getting the two bishops, you want to open up the position for them. That's the rule of thumb here. So let me just go back and see what happened. Okay, so e5, right idea, just the wrong choice, wrong timing. Okay, now white's able to lock up the center. Now black still has his diagonal for his bishop. This is true, right? But a lot of the possibilities of opening up the diagonal for the other bishop have vanished. And we don't have c5 for the knight. So that knight's kind of struggling for a square. And it gets in the way of the bishop, particularly right now. It's blocking the bishop from developing. Okay, so now f5, although it's a reasonable looking move, it further limits that light squared bishop. So black's kind of closed up the position instead of opening it. Okay, so there's quite a contrast between the two positions. Okay, so now e4. Well, okay, great. Now we've got this bishop activated, and that's good. But the other one is deactivated. Okay, now I'm going to show you a nice strategy black had that he didn't see, didn't take advantage of. It might defy a little logic. Black to play and do the best he can. Pause the video. Okay, come back. What do you think black should try here? You kind of have to understand long-range strategy here. This is something I first learned out of a Nimzo Indian defense, of all things. Okay, the key move here is give up that bishop. Okay, but people say, well, you just got the bishop here. You don't want to do that. Well, it's precisely what you want to do. Watch what happens. Black starts getting all kinds of active play against those doubled pawns. Okay, first step, let's bring the queen out. Queen out to a5. We're threatening to take that pawn. Now, if white does nothing, black will just do precisely that and bring the queen back to g7 and happily remain a pawn ahead. So white's got to stop and defend. Okay? Now, next objective. We got the weak pawn on c4. How are we going to attack that? Well, it's simple. We're going to play b6. Okay? Now, notice that if white tries knight b3 here, black has queen a4. And now we've got some pressure on c4. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on c4 here in a moment because black will be playing bishop e6 and knight e5, and white's in serious trouble. So white can't afford to play knight b3 here. So what's white going to do? He doesn't really have a whole lot of active squares to get his pieces to. If he plays rook a b1, white may be able to snatch that pawn. Well, maybe not. Black probably can't take it. His queen's going to get lost. But after rook a b1, bishop a6, and we just keep the pressure on. And really, white has the only possible break white has is stuff like f3. And that's just going to give him a backward pawn or backward isolated pawn or something. Who knows? White has nothing here. Black just needs a draw, and this is going to guarantee it, and he may even win this. So black had a tremendous opportunity at his disposal, but because of this, what I call a thinking deficiency, I've got the bishop here, I don't want to give it up. Well, this was a perfect time to give it up because the position called for it. And there it is. c4 and c3 are double pawns. They're weak. You go attack them, and it's that simple. So anyway, sorry, black, you didn't see that plan. Let's go back. Okay, so now knight e5. It looks like a logical move. You're controlling d3 or putting pressure down there. You want to anchor a knight down there if you can. Maybe something later with a knight f3 check, some kind of possibility if black can start launching his pieces over on the king side. Okay, so it just kind of follows a little plan here. Now black's maybe planning for b5, but white's next move, it kind of shows rook c1 might have been a mistake because white's playing for the open b file. Now naturally what you want to do with black in a defensive position like this is play b6 here and keep the equilibrium on the pawns. If they're exchanged, you remain with the pawns on c4 and c5. So now you can see why white wanted that rook on b1, not on c1, because that's the open file that's going to open up. So the best move for black here is to play b6. Okay, so this kind of gives white some options, and black's going to start heading for trouble here. Objectively, what black should try to do is try for b5, but it's not exactly clear how quick he can do that. and bishop d7 is needed, and rook b8 and then b5. But it's a lot. There's a lot of chess to play between now and then. But black just goes in for a5 to kind of take the sting away out of a potential c5 move. And so it looks like, well, black's probably okay here. He's reacquired the c5 square that he had a chance to put a knight on earlier, but the knight's now on e5 instead. Okay, so knight b5. Where's the rook going to go? a3 might have been okay here. Well, maybe not. Rook, knight b5. So it's kind of hard not to fault rook a8, although we'd sure like to try to put it somewhere else just to keep an option of doubling up on that file if possible. But anyway, knight b5, and now the white knights are finding all kinds of activity. In the other line I gave earlier, one of them was traded off, and the other one was stuck defending on d2, and it had no mobility whatsoever. Now the knights have all kinds of nice squares to go to. d4 is coming under white's control, and to counter the black knight on e5, whereas white could have never gotten a knight into that square before. Okay, so now b6, and just going to kind of move up here real quick. I want to show a point. Now I don't quite understand g5. It's just a little over ambitious. Black's not ready to attack on the king side, and this bishop on c8 is still sitting at home. Might have been the time to put it up on d7 and cut our losses and trade it off for a knight. Anyway, it goes on, and a few exchanges, and then all of a sudden, now look at those white knights. They're just killing black. White's very close to a winning game, and you'll see how here in just a moment. Okay, a little over optimistic there, but it's kind of hard to suggest a move for white or for black. Now here, white missed a nice continuation after queen f7. What white should do is play d7, and he's practically winning. As a matter of fact, I'm sure he's winning. Black has no defense. I was just playing with a few variations, like let's get the king. We have to. There's a lot of variations where that pawn will queen, and white will be playing bishop c4 and pinning the queen against the king. So let me just get the king over there. I don't have to show you all the lines. They're there. White just continues to improve his position. Now this has ideas of deflecting the bishop away from guarding e5. Eventually d8. See the threads d8 queen. Bishop takes can't be played because queen takes on e5, and black's winning. So, or white's winning. So black really has no move here. White had a crushing win at his disposal and didn't see it. What he played was okay, was just to win a pawn, but he had plenty of time on his clock. I don't know if he considered d5, but if he had spent his time, he would have found it. And here you can see he moved 20. He lost 25 seconds on his clock, so he spent about a minute and a half on it. And he's got a tremendous time advantage, so white got lucky that for what happened later, because you'll see. Anyway, just black's okay now. He's survived most of this, and now we get into bishop opposite color ending, and it should be drawable. The only disadvantage black has is the little time on his clock. But white really can't make any progress here, and I'm just going to kind of run through the moves and see what happens. White's missed his win, and now he throws his pawn away. It's hard to say that black could win this. Black should probably just offer a rook trade and take the draw and get the game over with. But I guess it's tempting when you have a passed pawn to try for a win. But sometimes you got to put the team first. And it just kind of goes on a little bit here, and all of a sudden something tragic happens. But and here it is. If black just plays king g7, there's no way white can make any progress. Black can just offer a draw, but inexplicably, let's see, how much time did he spend? Say 641, 19 plus 18 is 47. Wait a minute. 19 Plus 18 is 37 seconds. Yeah, he spent 8 seconds on this move. 8 seconds. If you just it looks like a logical move to play, but the problem is white has a mate, and game is over. Tough loss for black. Interesting game. Room for plenty of improvement from both sides. I want to thank everybody for their time. Take care.